from the Spirit with glorious light. Confidence living cleanses my soul, giving the Spirit fullest control.
I'm Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you about cause and effect. To those of us in the New Thought movement, this is a fundamental teaching. To those of you who come from traditional backgrounds, you may have a different approach or use different words. In the traditional Christian church, often the words that are used that are similar are sin and punishment. In the Eastern religions, sometimes people use the law of karma as a reference to this basic concept, but cause and effect. The cause and effect of the things that happen are the things that happen in our lives. We believe that we live in our minds and not in the world, and therefore every thought, which is a cause, has an effect and causes something to happen. But we have to be real cautious about this idea of cause and effect, and we have to weigh what it is we believe about it and how much power we give to it. If you come from a traditional religious background, perhaps you give a great deal of authority or credibility to the concept of sin or punishment. If you come from a more liberal or New Thought background, perhaps you use the laws of cause and effect as principles that you apply to your daily life. If you come from an Eastern religion, perhaps karma is something in which you have great faith and belief. And certainly these ideas and concepts of religion have great validity and great help to us in our lives. But we need to examine what it is we believe and how much power it is we give to these concepts. Even in our own movement, I believe too many people give authority and power to the law of cause and effect, when in reality there is a way to circumvent cause and effect. There's a way to circumvent sin and punishment. There's a way to circumvent karma. If you went to the doctor and you had x-rays and tests, and you went through the process of having these examinations that we all dread with our medical doctor, and you went back for the results, and the doctor told you that the results are very bad, you have 6 months to live, you at that point in time have a choice. And that choice is how you feel about the information that you've been given and how much authority you give to its credibility. Now, certainly, maybe you have the disease, but the reality is that very often in our lives, because of people, circumstances, and situations to whom and to which we give great authority in our lives, we believe what we're told. And as soon as we believe what we're told, the dynamic of mind action puts in place a law that creates an environment that maybe doesn't have to be the way that we always believe that it does have to end. If that doctor told you that you had 6 months to live, in reality you may have 6 months to live, but you have a myriad of ways to think about the 6 months that you have to live. You have a multitude of ways to think about how it is you're going to feel within yourself, not only about the news that you just received, but also how you're going to feel in the days and weeks as you move through this process of this disease and how it's going to impact you and the people around you. You don't know how many people are going to be affected by this news that has come to you, that you have absorbed into your inner being and that you have committed to your mind. You don't really have a total idea of how many lives and how many people are going to be affected by this. But the reality is that every decision and every experience in our lives affects many, many other people. The authority that we give to the things that we believe to be true empowers and strengthens whatever it is that we are giving strength to. In the case of the doctor, it is giving agreement to what he has said. Certainly we may want to agree with what he has said, but what he has said may or may not take place. I'm not saying that if he tells you you have a terminal illness that you are not going to die. I am telling you that if he says you have 6 months to live, you may have 3 months to live. You may have 6 months to live. You may have 9 months to live. You may have 2 years to live, or you may live longer. The point I'm making is that what he has said to you is what he believes to be true. The cause that he shared with you is that you have an illness. The effect to that cause is that that particular disease causes physical death at a certain point in time. If you simply agree with everything that he says, if you agree with the fact that you have the disease, that he knows that you have the disease, and that he has told you that you're going to die in 6 months, and you agree to die in 6 months, your mind will prepare for that process. In reality, no one really knows. We know the cause, but we really don't know the effect. If we take the point of sin and punishment, the church or theologians or ministers or priests or people to whom we have given authority in our minds have helped us to understand what it is we are to believe is sin, and therefore have assigned punishment to that sin. That's a Western theological belief that is fundamental to Christian teaching. If you or any of us had grown up in the East, we would have come probably to an understanding of the law of karma. And the law of karma says that there is a cause and an effect for every cause. And therefore, the experiences of life very often are the result of karmic law coming into this life experience, and that there's really nothing much that you can do about it, and that the end result is that you are going to pay for the transgressions of the past, and that the payment is meted out in some fashion. Often in the East, when people see, for instance, a retarded child, a handicapped person, the solution to that problem or the explanation that is given by religious people is that this is his karma. He's working through a karmic process from the past. Christians or people from traditional religious beliefs may have that same belief in terms of people receiving punishment for actions. Metaphysicians, people in the New Thought movement such as ours, may believe that these individuals are experiencing the effect of some cause in their life. The reality is that we don't know what the effect of any cause is. God knows the effect, but the power of God to intervene in the affairs of your life and my life is extremely limited, because the decisions that we make are decisions that we make for our lives based upon the dynamic of our mind. So what I'm saying is, in most cases, we are talking about probability or potential of something happening. We can't predict the weather. We can't predict the weather. We never have been able to. We can't predict the will of a human being. We can't predict what someone is going to think. We don't have that power. And so what we do have is the reality that there is a cause and there will be an effect, but what the effect will ultimately be is unknown to us. All things are possible. All things are possible. There is a way to redirect the effect, the negative effects of life. There is a way to circumvent the traditional concepts of sin and punishment. There is a way to short-circuit the law of karma. That was shared with us. That principle that can short-circuit these premises of cause and effect were shared with us by the great teacher and master, the Lord Christ Jesus. His way of circumventing these matters was to enfold them in love. It was to say that this is the way something is. This is what I have done. This is where I am. But this is not where I choose to be. And by changing the way that we feel about that which we have done or that experience in which we are, by enfolding it in love, if it is something that we've done wrong, the simple premise of confessing the fact that we've done something wrong, repenting of it, which simply means saying that we're not going to do it anymore, and committing ourselves to that statement that we're not going to do it anymore, being remorseful about it, circumvents the whole process of punishment. Cause and effect. If you're faced like this person that we talked about earlier, where a physician tells you that you're sick and you have 6 months to live, the cause is real. The effect we don't know. We do know that something will come of this experience. And we know that if we center ourselves in the presence of God, that if we center ourselves in love and enlightenment, and if we choose to enfold the experience in a positive and affirmative way, that it will turn out considerably different than if we fight it or reject it or try with all of our means to deny its reality. This world is finite. We know that it is finite. Spirit is infinite. Your life, my life in spirit is infinite. We have infinite possibilities. We have infinite potential in every one of our life experiences. Cause and effect does not create for us a concrete reality of what is to be. Sin and punishment do not set in motion a guaranteed punishment for every action that you make. Karmic law does not rob you of having a fulfilled and happy life. Those principles are based upon the finite concepts of this world. But we are infinite. You are infinite, I am infinite. The dynamic of our mind is infinite. And because of the infinite potentiality of our minds, because of the fact that we are children of an infinite creator, we need not hold ourselves to the finite thoughts of simple cause and effect, to the finite thoughts of sin and punishment, to the finite principle and law of karma. We are infinite, and the potential for our lives, the potentials that we exist within, are infinite. Cause and effect is a reality, but the ultimate effect of any cause is unknown to you and it is unknown to me if we embrace the reality that the universe is the place in which we live, that we are spiritual beings, and that we are more than what we see in the physical body. How many watermelons are contained in the seeds in one watermelon? No one knows. No one knows. It is impossible to calculate. How many people are touched by the reading of a book or the watching of a program? No one knows. The infinite ability that we have to touch other people through the process of our life is a cause and effect that sets into motion a dynamic principle that brings hope and great joy to all of us. Cause and effect, it exists. And every word, thought, and deed create a cause for which there is an effect. And it is our challenge as children of God to be mindful of the reality that we live in our minds. And as we create our thought processes, we give power to the causes in our lives to determine the ultimate effects. I don't know what difficulties you face. I don't know what pains you have. I don't know whether you have limit and lack in your physical needs, whether you have sufficient money to pay your bills, whether you have an illness you deal with, a problem child, a relationship that's gone sour, someone who has passed into spirit. I don't know. But no matter what it is that you face, no matter where it is that you are today or will be in the future, by creating within your mind the reality that the cause, the experience, the daily life through which you move has no power to create an effect that is cast in stone, will liberate and free you, and it will short-circuit the ideas of cause and effect, of sin and punishment, and of karma. So I invite you to change the way that you think, to change the way that you think about these closely held ideas. Perhaps you're someone who from the earliest age in Sunday school has been taught about sin and punishment. Maybe you're a metaphysician who has believed in the law of cause and effect for many, many years. Maybe you're someone from one of the Eastern faiths that believes strongly in the law of karma. Know in your heart and in your mind that those laws, those principles, those practices can be short-circuited by your divine mind connected with the mind of God. And in that process, an entirely new way of thinking can come to you. We believe in prayer as a centering force, as a dynamic reality, and we'd like to invite you to pause at this point in the program to share with us in a moment of prayer. Eternal God, we join our hearts and minds together in great thanksgiving for all of the laws and principles that you give to us that hold this universe in such perfect and divine order. And we claim that we are responsible for the causes of our lives, but that the effects are in your hands, and that in your hands are infinite potentials and possibilities that we have not even come to know, and we are open to the reality of their presence in our lives. And we know and pray these things in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of love. Amen.
That was a wonderful reminder that as you sow, so shall you reap, cause and effect. whatsoever a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That is something we all need to give thought to, and I hope that everyone who hears this program and watches it will give thought to their own actions. Every thought, as you said, every thought, word, and deed is important.
And each one is creative.
Right.
And each one is a cause.
Yes.
And creates in it an effect. But the wonder is that the effect can be altered or changed. So even if we do start out with negative thoughts, we're able to short circuit those if we're able to undo whatever it is that we've done in the first place that has caused the great difficulty.
Yes, and too often with children we use too many shoulds and shouldn'ts, oughts and ought nots. And if we could just stop that and view children in the knowing that if we treat them in a positive way, they react in a positive way.
One of the most damaging things we do for children is that the most emphatic things that we teach them are the negative aspects of life. The one thing that we teach children is no, 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 no. You can't do this, you can't do that. We tell children what they cannot do, what they should not do, instead of telling them what they can do and what they should do, what they must do.
Yes, so. And you can see this reflected in the children who are well behaved and calm, that their parents or whoever takes care of them teaches them in that fashion. Instead of no, 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 instead of a negative way, they're taught in a positive way and given positive reinforcement.
And cause and effect, of course, are taught to children. And there are some immediate causes and immediate effects. We know if a child runs in front of a moving car, that's going to, in all likelihood, have a very negative effect. And so there are logical issues of cause and effect. But the ideas that we're talking about were really helping us to understand the ideas of cause and effect in our mind.
Yes. And it's the small things that we too often say no, no to the child and say negative things to them. And as you said, if it's important, then we have to say no to them. And sometimes we have to say, in a sense, scream it one way or another. But we can just put them in the circumstance where they're not tempted in that way. Watch them, keep them confined, keep them so we don't have to use the no's and the shouldn'ts. And if we teach them in a positive way, then they won't be in that position as a rule.
Mm-hmm. I think in our movement, in the New Thought movement, in metaphysics, so many people are so rigidly bound by the concept of cause and effect and often experience negative outpicturings or experiences in life and are willing to just dismiss it as karmic or as the effect of something that was said or done earlier.
Yes, they'll say, oh, that's just my karma, when they realize it's their karma to really change whatever they want to change, and that they can change and may change whatever they wish to change. And I do think that some things are planned in advance. I think before we come into life, our guardian angel and a Lord or angel of karma and our high self plans an overall plan of what we're going to do in this life. But as you said, that's not set in stone. By the grace of God, anything can change. With God, all things are possible, as you so well said.
And there are choices in all of this. I think I agree wholeheartedly, and certainly we teach that we come into this life experience with a predetermined life pattern, if you will. But that pattern changes based upon how we respond to the experiences of life. And so there are a lot of options open to us and a lot of decisions that need to be made for our spiritual well-being. It isn't that we decide to come in and simply go through the motions of a hallow life and go out at the end and get thanked by God for the wonderful things that we've accomplished. It doesn't work that way. We're here for the process of learning and growing. And the only way that we learn and grow is to confront the reality of our own needed challenges.
Right.
And it is the needed challenge that is the cause. The effect really is not in the hands of God or the universe, but is truly in our hands. And we participate as much in the effect many times as we do in the cause. But so often we're willing to just accept the cause and the effect is what it is and we just have to go on from there. That's not the way we should operate.
Exactly. And unfortunately, doctors too often tell patients that they only have a certain limited amount of time to live. And I think it used to be that doctors wouldn't even tell patients anything. They would never tell them when they were terminally ill. They would never give them any negative information. And the tables turned, and so they told them all the time that you have so many weeks or months or years to live. And only God knows how long anyone has to live.
That's absolutely right. We have great potential, and it is impossible. I mean, just as I said during the talk, the weathermen have been trying to predict the weather for a
Yes.
long time. But the doctors can tell us approximately how long. They can tell us what it is they believe it is
Yeah.
that we have. And then it is up to us. Someone wrote some years ago about the idea of having 6 months to live and went around asking people, what would you do if you had 6 months to live? What would you do if you had 6 months to live? And then the end result was that almost everybody that he talked to had 6 months to live.
Yeah.
You have 6 months to live. I have 6 months to live. The person who's told that they will pass into spirit in 6 months, if someone said you have only 6 months to live, whether they said you have only 6 months to live or you have 6 months to live, it's true for all of us.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
And so what it is we do with that time is the important issue. And some of us who haven't been told that we have 6 months will only have 3 or 2.
Yes.
It's-
I think Guidepost Magazine is a wonderful little publication because it shows these truths to be evident, that people might be told by their doctors or they might be told by someone else that they only have a limited amount of time, but they beat the odds and they live for a long, long time. And those stories, his mysterious ways in the Guidepost Magazine, always show how odds can be beaten, and we never know where God is going to intervene on our behalf.
where God is going to intervene and
Yes.
where each of us is going to make a decision.
Yes.
Make a decision to stay for a longer period or stay for a shorter period. The length of time isn't the important issue in death, because death is inevitable. It's going to come to us all. And I think it's very, very important that we align our thinking with the fact that we are empowered and strengthened by the dynamic of God in us to live our lives every day, regardless of what we're faced with.
Yes, exactly. And we can always remember that there is this divine spark within. I mean, God the whole, but God within us is our attachment to God. And if we can just remember that we are God indwelling, and it's so important that we know our own strength, and we know that our minds can, as you so often say, we live in our minds and not in the world, and so forth. In so many different ways, you express that so beautifully, that it's our mind that tells us, that determines the outcome.
And our mind isn't really governed by the physical body. And so often we believe it is. And you've known people, and so have I, who've been terribly ill with horrible illnesses that have suffered a great deal, but their spirit is so wonderfully intact and they deal with it so magnificently. Other people are healed, other people are improved to some extent, but it isn't important what we experience in the body or in the physical life as much as it is important what we experience in mind.
Yes, and another thing you point out so often is that those people whose minds are really essentially seemingly not working, well, on the inner, it is working. And on the inner, they're still evolving and they're still doing things and they're still living their karma.
Absolutely, and I think we need to know that, especially today, so many people are concerned about Alzheimer's, or people are concerned about elderly or not so elderly people who have dementia, or we have young people with AIDS today who have horrible forms of dementia in some cases, and people will ask, why is it that this happens? Why is this happening to my loved one? Why is my mother enduring this after 80 or 90 years? But in reality, I think we need to see those loved ones the same way that Christ Jesus saw everyone. He saw everyone as a perfect child of God. Those people are perfectly fine. They don't look fine to us because they don't know us anymore, and they don't get up and comb their hair, and they don't drink coffee and do the things that we think are important. But if we believe that God is real, and if we believe that spirit is untouchable by the physical, then what we believe is that those people are working out some wonderful thing. They have something to do before they go, and they're perfectly all right, and don't worry about them. Don't worry at all. Just keep them clean and comfortable, and if they don't know you, if they babble, they're busy doing something else. They don't need to remember their address. I was in a nursing home recently, and a little lady was talking to her husband, and she was talking to him about giving him a little quiz about all of the places that they had lived. And she was asking this poor elderly gentleman, who was quite confused, all of the addresses. Well, she wanted to know what the address was of the house they lived in 1936 and 1942. I don't remember the house I lived in 5 years ago. It's not important. But what is important is that he is perfectly all right.
Yes.
He's whole.
Yes. And that is so important that we realize that we're whole in God. And if we can just remember that, it makes life a lot easier.
But I think God's trying to teach us that just by our own physical being. I mean, most of us are aging. I
Yes.
mean, all of us are aging,
Yes.
and most of us age in different ways. But God is constantly reminding us of the fact that it's not the physical that matters. It's not the world that matters. And it's not to say that the physical is bad or that the world is bad. It is to say that God wants us to realize that there's more to us than what we see, and that we are strong and ageless and healthy and whole spiritual beings, and nothing can touch that.
And we're at one in mind, body, and spirit. But we need to nurture each separately. We need to nurture our bodies with proper food and education and exercise, food and exercise, and education for our minds.
Yeah.
And for our spirit, the prayer and meditation and knowing God fully. And so and then they become one. It's all one, just as we're all one, as the people of earth are all one.
And we need to give up the concept of sin and punishment.
Yes.
We need to give up the idea that every time we do something wrong that God is up there waiting to knock us down, or that we deserve something negative that we're getting. And we need to be cautious of that in the New Thought movement too. We need to get rid of this rigid idea of cause and effect, and we need to stop telling people, well, what you're experiencing is just an outpicturing of what you did 20 years ago. And deal with the fact that they're children of God, and where they are is where they need to be, and just enfold them in love and light and embrace them.
Exactly. Just avoid separateness. Avoid separateness. And I do, as you know, past life therapy work, and I don't like to do it very well, and I don't do it very often, because it's not important that people go back in time and see what they did one time or another, because it's doing what you just said to avoid doing.
We need to be in the present moment.
Exactly. Living in the now.
In the now, and giving up some of these hard and fast ideas and teachings that we have about the past, and embrace the reality that God loves us, and God would never punish us, God would never cause any negative effect in our life, and that everything that's negative and everything that's painful is transient and passing.
And to remember that every thought is important.
Every thought is important. We live in our minds and not in the world. And Reverend Freelander and I have been sharing with you ideas of confident living, and we hope that they have helped you on your pathway to life, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Confident living, banner of might, comes from the Spirit with glorious light. Confident living cleanses my soul, giving the Spirit fullest control.